Actually, that was a double entendre regarding my the title of the talk. And so when I said navigating policy in a changing environment, I actually meant political environment, though I think this actually has repercussions when we're talking about climate change as well. And so what I do and my students do in our work is study, and in many cases actually apply, because I work in a clinical or practicum setting. So what students engaged in my classes are actually working for clients, and it's all levels of government, federal, state, and local. It's NGOs, and sometimes it's even private corporations. So these folks are asking us to actually develop policies, and it's policies to motivate environmental protection. And people has the legal definition of people, which means people like you and me, but it also means governments and corporations too. So that's what we are sort of what I've been hired to do, help our students learn how to actually do that. And in figuring out what I could talk about in such a short amount of time, what I realized is over time there's sort of one big thing that I've realized in doing these kind of policies. There's one thing that actually does set you up to success. And I think every single time my students and I have taken advantage of this, the policies that we've worked on have actually been implemented and or enforced at some level of governance. So that's what I wanted to share a little bit about with y'all today. And what that is harking to some kind of vision. So we're all geeks and we're really into our science or into legal. Like I love to think about how transferable development rights work, or why people are motivated by criminal penalties or things like that. And y'all are all, many of you are really involved in sort of those picayune details of your science or things like that. But in the big picture, what people really care about is how things are going to get better if you undertake these kind of conservation measures or whatever it is that our students and we are helping set forward. So developing that vision, I think, is really, really critical. And in many cases, we can just go to our client and say, why do you want this particular policy? And in some cases, they might say, well, our comprehensive land use plan says we have to do this, or TNC's conservation plan says we have to do this. But what I've found many, many times is there actually isn't any kind of community vision. So one of the things we actually have to do is step back and figure out what is that community vision. And that might be one of the very most valuable things we do with our students, because they have to learn it's not our vision, it really is our client's vision, or the community that we are trying to get their behavior to change their kind of vision. And so one of the first places I actually was engaged in a process to do this was in Athens, Clarke County, and actually work all over the Southeast, but it's fun that that first one was actually here. And I went back to 1990. In Athens, Clarke County, the federal government had just enacted a federal law that required us to put liners and leachate control systems under our solid waste landfills. Incredibly expensive, but really needed to protect groundwater and other resources from water contamination. But we had been paying in Athens, Clarke County for our landfill through property taxes, and that no longer was feasible. We had to raise revenue. The county commissioners were going to have to increase the tipping rate, but that's the money you pay at the landfill, you know, when you bring a big load of garbage, and that translates down to residential consumers like us. They were afraid they were going to be voted out of office if they raised the tipping fees. They also were worried for the first time. They wanted to conserve landfill space because they didn't want to waste this expensive engineered system on things that could easily be used, taken out of the whole system for recycling or things like that. So they came to us to say, how can we save landfill space and how can we promote more recycling and waste reduction? So we started with this vision, and it's so fun that I would read it all to you, but I know we don't have time. We say, imagine instead a different picture. The landfill your county and its municipalities own in conjunction with the adjacent county is a quiet place. Covered trucks drive in and out only infrequently. The trenches are relatively dry. Food waste is being diverted to a demonstration compost project nearby. Toxics have been virtually eliminated as a joint project by the Scouts and the Kiwanis Club has alerted citizens both to the dangers of landfilling household toxics and alternative to their use and disposal. disposal. The recycling center not far from the landfill is teeming with activity. Over 50% of the community's waste is currently recovered. It talks about construction materials being drawn out by Habitat for Humanity. It talks about the fact that local businesses have grown as a result of the newsprint and things that are available through recycling. It talks about the fact that yard clippings aren't put in the landfill, but instead they go through a big mulcher, and there are long lines of neighbors stopping to pick up that good compost. It also said that, that in everybody's houses, the garbage can is really little and the recycling bin is really big. And then a couple of years ago, when the Office of Sustainability, you know, in all the offices that are engaged in office recycling, they gave us those big blue recycling bins. And then on the top is this little teeny plastic box for waste. And I thought, oh my goodness, it's finally happened. And really and truly, many of the things that were in this vision statement have actually come to bear. And that's because the community went into this process with the vision, and they understood what we could gain. And even before we were talking about sustainability as a concept, that vision usually had that three-legged stool. You know, you address the environmental, you address the economic benefits, and you address the social concept of it. So, and at that point, the tools you use, it's easier to get people to buy into different tools, and the tools sort of fall into place. Then what we developed is a menu of options, and what we adopted a lot of them, the county did, and then they were faced with two different decisions. Do we do mandatory recycling, or we do a variable rate garbage fee? And nobody in Georgia had ever done a variable rate garbage fee, and that's where the more garbage you put on the curb, the more you pay. So you can pay $30 a month to get a big can, or you can pay $12 a month and get a little can on the curb. And so we did focus groups, we had meetings, and the Athens Banner-Herald did a on the ground poll of citizens and asked, what do you know about variable rate garbage fees? All 9 people, and this was after like half a year of work, all 9 people interviewed knew exactly what variable rate garbage fees were and why they might make sense for our community. When you do all that, it's a no-brainer for the elected officials. They know that they have the coverage they need and that we're going to get to that vision that everybody had sort of bought into. Another fun example of that, and I think it's particularly relevant in these days, is my students and I had the privilege of working with the preceding 3 governors, and that started with Zell Miller and Roy Barnes, and then Governor Perdue. Very different visions of governing and the role of state government. But all of them had really compelling visions of land conservation. They all thought that was really very important. And so Governor Perdue, who had actually acquired a lot of state parks, he said, I want a new model from what I've been doing the last 4 years, and I want to fund the acquisition of parks close to rivers, to bring people to the rivers to recreate and to create a constituency for their further protection through laws or things like that. Governor Barnes had a very different point of view. He was from Marietta, rapidly growing part of the state, and he wanted to make sure that the fastest growing of the parts of the state had access to land for passive recreation and for stormwater control. So what he said is, I'm going to start a program where if you show me that you have a plan to permanently protect 20% of your land base, I'm going to give you money for the acquisition of county parks or green spaces or things like that to achieve that. And then Governor Perdue had an entirely different philosophy. He said, that's an entitlement. I don't want to just give that money to the urban governments. He said, the people who are doing a great job of conserving land right now are private individuals. I want to give the tools to make it more financially possible for them to do the kind of things they'd like to do. I want to give them a little way to monetize the permanent protection of land. So what he created is a state income tax credit program where the first time in Georgia, if you put a conservation easement on your property, you're eligible for a state income tax credit versus just a deduction. And that provides a lot of incentives for landowners to actually undertake these kind of conservation activities. So I think as we went into Watershed UGA, and if some of y'all don't know about it, I urge you to look at our website. But the vision of that is actually to develop a platform for discussing sustainability across the campus, across all of the land grant missions of the college, which are research, education, and public service and outreach, in addition to plant operations. So that was our vision, to have everybody on campus talking about sustainability and learning how they could impact sustainability, and for us actually to be showing on the way that we manage our own property that we actually are engaged in sustainability. And then what we did is let all the bells and whistles to actually be developed by all these fabulous faculty, and students had a million ideas about how to actually do that in their college and across campuses. But that overarching initial vision sort of helped things get started. How am I on time? What I would like to show right now is a video. Really, it's just a 2-minute video. And this is a vision that our students had. And these were College of Environmental Design students and Ecology, Law, and Engineering students. And I'll tell you more about it right after this is over. Yeah, it's just some really nice banjo music.
Sure.
There, thanks. So this was actually a plan developed by a graduate level class to develop a pilot project to see if constructed wetlands remove pharmaceuticals and other emerging contaminants at a cost-effective price. We gave this report that the students drafted to the Coca-Cola Foundation, who then took it to the Coca-Cola bottling company, and together they gave us about $680,000 to build these pilot constructed wetlands. And the wetlands were completed in August, and we now are beginning to monitor the output from the wetlands, and Marcia Black is involved at College of Public Health. Bill Tolner was very involved in the engineering design of the wetlands. But it started with the vision that the students helped the community actually articulated. It's pretty amazing to me that in 1.5 year time, the funding was in place, and now we are actually determining whether it's actually working, and if it does, Suwannee will actually upgrade it and will be able to recycle the water, wastewater, and use it for drinking water in Suwannee. So as we head into this holiday season, or continue navigating our way through the food part of this holiday season, the wonderful news is that there's more than one way to crack a nut. And so long as we have this overall vision that it's the pecan pie that we're after, I really do think we can crack the nut. And it's regardless, in many cases, of political constraints and such.